Yeah, this is like one of the busiest times of the year for me, so I'm not able to breathe very often on stuff. So, okay, today's, like I said, we're gonna probably get through the rest of our presentation today. So again, get into your notebooks on a blank sheet of paper, so then that way you can kind of keep all this stuff kind of, I guess you would say compartmentalized, but not really. It gives you space to be able to add stuff later on and whatnot when we go through our review and notes and things like that. All right. Yeah. So yesterday we talked about, let me just jump back here real quick. Yesterday we were talking briefly about brake lays. Now, if you've done any type of manufacturing class, like with Mr. Chia, you probably, or even Mr. Massan's over in woodworking. I don't know if he runs the wood lathes over there. But basically what a lathe does is it turns the rotor, turns the rotor, okay, at a particular speed, and then we have a bit that is going to go across that surface of that rotor, and it is essentially going to knock down or cut any of the high spots. And our goal that we want to achieve with that brake lathe is to get both sides of our rotor parallel once again and quote unquote smooth, right? Machined is the technical term that we want to use here. So that way, as we introduce new brake pads to that, we have a new surface for those pads to be able to burnish or break in, to seat against, to be able to allow it to have its maximum braking friction and force on the vehicle. Okay. Understand though that as we are machining these rotors, we are removing material. Okay. Now the objective is not to remove too much material. We want to remove just enough to be able to allow these to be functional for the new pads or work with the new pads. If we remove too much, unfortunately, as we go to use them, quote unquote, because you wouldn't, they would heat up much quicker, okay? Which means they're more prone to brake fade, okay, or heat fade. So every rotor, when brand new, is going to have a nominal thickness, okay? That's as if it was brand new, made from the factory, casted, packaged up, shipped to you. You take it out of the packaging and are ready to go and put it on the vehicle to use, okay? Over the lifespan of that rotor, as those brake pads are creating friction on that rotor, most of the, how would I describe this? Most of the material that's being removed is from the brake pad, right? And that's done on purpose, through brake dust and all that sort of stuff. But part of that rotor is also the second part of that equation and also experiencing friction. And you will be removing part of that surface layer of that rotor, again, over a long period of time. Okay? This is why when we go to do our brake job, we want to make sure that we are measuring what the rotor thickness actually is. Okay? And not just in one particular spot. We want to measure it at various different intervals throughout the circumference of that rotor. All right? In, out, around, all that sort of stuff. And we were kind of getting an idea of how much material is remaining on that rotor. Okay? Then we have to come to a decision, right? Is there enough material that's remaining on that rotor to where if we were to remove 2, 3, 4 thousandths of an inch off of each side, which is a lot, by the way, to where we have enough material remaining that it can be reused. Okay, and there are specifications from the manufacturer, the vehicle manufacturer, not the rotor manufacturer, that's going to tell you, hey, this is how thick it has to be in order for you to allow machining to happen on a brake lathe. And if you measure it and there's a discard thickness and it's below that, you gotta basically recycle it. Okay, go scrap it and get a brand new one. Okay, and obviously if you're below the machine thickness width, but above the discard thickness, you're still also going to be scrapping that rotor because you don't have enough material to remove to be able to reuse it. So there's 3 different measurements that you need to be keyed up on when making these evaluations: the nominal thickness, the machine to thickness, and the discard thickness. Okay, also sometimes called the minimum thickness. All right. Now, on brand new rotors, these measurements are actually stamped on the edge of every rotor. Okay, so if you get it brand new, you can actually rotate it around and it should stay like a measurement. Okay, and again, those are measured in thousandths of an inch. Okay, now the fun part is that stamping doesn't go away, but the problem is over the lifetime of that rotor, it's going to be exposed to elements, and then eventually rust is going to form on that edge. So sometimes it's very difficult to read later on.
That's why you take a picture of it.
Could take a picture of it. You could also get a brush to try to scrub it off to read it, but more often than not, you're going to look up this information on like a service information, like Identifix, right? And it's going to give you that stuff. Okay. It's going to be expected that in your group, when you go to outside in the shop to do this lab, that you are finding out what the discard thickness is and the machine thickness is going to end up being. Okay, it's going to be part of the lab sheet. You got to figure that out, write it down, and then when you make your measurements, you are comparing your measurements to what those measurements say on the electronic service information provider. All right. All right. Any questions about that? All right, again, as we're doing our inspections, rotors with blue areas, heat cracks, heat checks, and hard spots have gotten so hot that a change in the metallurgy has taken place on a microscopic level, I might add. Okay, you are not going to visibly see the characteristic changes from the naked eye. Okay, you would have to literally zoom in with the microscope or beyond that even to see the crystalline structure and how it changes. Again, that changes the properties of that rotor. Too much heat, too often, without the ability to cool down, or its ability to cool down too quickly, is going to change the properties. Okay, I'm not going to get into the scientific principles here and the engineering side of things. It's just that's beyond the scope of this particular class. But if you had any kind of a physical science class, they potentially could have gotten into that. Okay, but again, any type of heat cracks. This might be a little difficult to see in the back, but there are these little cracks here. All right, that's built into this. Or I would say built into it, but has occurred on this particular rotor. Even if you had enough material to put this on a brake lathe and actually remove it, you don't. Because, again, this has fundamentally changed the properties of the rotor. Does that crack? Probably not. But it has penetrated enough to where even removing it is not going to change the metal properties there. It's garbage, junk, right? And you might touch it, feel it, and go, oh man, it's still smooth, it looks good outside of that. But again, you can't just simply like throw it back on there and expect it to have the same properties. It won't. Okay? So that's where you have to go in and make the decision and be intelligent about this and not be cheap and replace it so that way you can have the proper braking performance that you expect out of your brakes. Okay? Yeah. Okay. And this can come in a variety of different shapes and sizes. The more experience you have inspecting rotors, the more things kind of draw out to you as you see it, right? But this is what's going to separate those people that are doing it in their driveway from someone who does it as a living, right? As a professional technician, if I were to slap this back on the brake system, right, and I hand the keys back over to the customer, and something happens to that car, like a crash and an injury, guess who is liable for that?
You.
Me. Because I knowingly gave the customer back a vehicle in this condition, knowing that it's not going to have the same performance. Okay? So me and my shop are going to be held liable for that. Okay? And that's not only in a civil case, they could sue me, but also criminally too.
Manslaughter.
Did you get
Right.
a prison time for that though?
My parole officer says I shouldn't talk about that.
Oh. Okay, for real? I can't tell if you're being for real or not.
No, that means I've got a good poker face. Alright, again, here's a picture of a rotor, right? If you were to slap this off of, or take the wheel off of a vehicle and you were inspecting this, right? You can already start making assertions about whether this is reusable or not. Okay? Right, we've got heat spots up here, various different things around the edge where the brake pad material is making contact with this rotor. Okay? This sort of stuff that's in the middle, it's all rusty and whatnot. I'm not super concerned about that. If it's really bad, yes, I would replace it regardless, but I'm replacing this just due to the fact that's happening. Okay?
What if
That
there's-
stuff is there.
Like there's the two up top and then two down towards the bottom. What if there was just like one set of those?
Done.
Even if they're just one?
Even just one. Okay? Because again, I don't know what the condition of that is throughout the entire rotor, and there might be some stuff underlying here that I can't see, right? So it's easy enough to make the decision, go, you know what, when in doubt, get a new one.
When in doubt, throw it out.
Yep, pretty much, right?
Can we cut one of these open?
I'm not going to cut one open, but I'm going to definitely be demonstrating the brake plate for you guys, so you can kind of see what an old rotor looks like, and then what it looks like after it's been machined.
No, I want to see like the inside of.
Sure. There you go.
I know what's wrong with it.
Based off of what we've been talking about the last couple days, what happened here?
It ain't got no gas.
It's a little thin.
What's a little thin?
The rotor?
Yeah, brakes are not supposed to look like that. Good. Yeah.
My brakes look like that.
What happened? How did this condition occur?
They
Dark
used
matter.
it long enough, didn't replace it.
What's that?
They used it long enough and didn't replace it.
Replace what?
The rotor.
Okay.
I've had that happen before.
Now,
It's really special.
is this particular rotor able to still stop the vehicle?
No.
Absolutely it is.
Yes.
Absolutely it can.
Yeah, but like,
Why?
it's not gonna go as
Okay.
fast enough.
The question is, are we still able to generate friction?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably.
Are we going to generate heat? Yeah.
Yeah.
So guess what? We're going to stop.
Eventually.
Eventually, right? Now, is this going to have the same brake performance as a brand new pads and rotors
Yeah.
and all the new hardware and everything?
Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely not. Okay?
How much brake fade per second?
Yeah. This is definitely going to potentially have brake fade.
Potentially.
Right? Now, again, it depends on how fast you're driving, how hard you slam on the brakes and all that sort of stuff. So here's my question to you. Did the driver of this vehicle know that their brakes were in this condition?
Probably. Their little tab was gone.
I'm going to tell you right now, absolutely they knew this was in bad condition. Okay? Because I'll guarantee you they've been driving it for so long that wear indicator was making a bunch of noise, squealing,
But now it's gone.
and now it's gone.
I
Okay?
think that was the pads. I think that was just
The brake pads probably also are down to their steel backing, right?
Oh, and then
There's no
grinding.
more lining anymore on those brake pads. And now that steel lining is starting to eat away at your rotor. Now you can actually, it ate away at all the rotor, so much so that you can actually see
The vent.
the splines on the vents on the inside of it. There is no rotor surface left on this.
Oh.
Okay?
So-
Every time that you're pressing that brake pedal now, that brake, the backing on that is going to literally be chattering along those splines.
Something tells me that if he keeps going, he's gonna just melt the.
Oh yeah, no, you can keep going. You can keep going. Here's the fun part about this. This is too often the case where
What?
stuff like this is on the road.
What?
And the scary part is you are are driving right next to this person and you don't even know it. Right? You fully expect, listen, you fully expect the person that's driving next to you at 70 miles an hour on Highway 41, for instance, to be able to have a vehicle that can stop and be controlled to not hit you, but then it's like this.
Bro, Michigan's together. You drive a bigger car, right?
Yeah, I got a 4Runner.
Do semis scare you to pass?
No.
You just
Okay.
pass it.
Anyways, here's another thing to kind of keep in mind.
Lights.
Would you trust the owner or operator of this vehicle to do their own brake job?
With my house runs.
Oh no. Oh no.
Would you?
500 bucks a casino.
What's stopping them from doing their own brake job on this
Knowledge?
vehicle?
Absolutely not.
Are you kidding me? This person's probably looking up information on YouTube to figure things out.
Hey, I have a mechanic that did that.
No, I'm not saying
How does it
YouTube.
work?
Listen. Let me make this abundantly clear. YouTube is an absolutely fantastic
Okay,
resource.
it's probably the money, because if he had the money, he would have already got them done.
Probably. But let's say they were saving up. They can go out to AutoZone and they can go up and be like, hey, here's my car. What do I need to change out my brakes? You think the auto parts store is going to care? No, they're going to take their money. Here's all the parts you need. You're going to go to their driveway and they start taking things apart. Right? They're going to start slapping things together, hoping that it's done right. Do you think it's going to be done right?
Probably not.
Absolutely not. Okay? But what's stopping that person from doing their own brake job?
Nothing.
Nothing. This is why education is so important, right? This is why you need to make sure that you understand that it's not just taking a rotor on and off, putting brake pads on and off. There's so much more to automotive maintenance than you could ever imagine. Okay? And it's one of those things where it's like, all right, cool, anybody can do this, but not everybody should be doing this. I would make an argument, most people shouldn't even touch their brakes, right? You should take it to a professional who does this for a living. They're gonna charge you some money for it, but guess what? When I'm sick, where do I go?
The doctor?
I go to the doctor,
Doctor's face.
right? Doctor's gonna prescribe me some medication so I can get better, right? If I got a toothache, where am I going?
The dentist.
Going to the dentist. I'm gonna pay them a lot of money to get fixed, right? Where do we take our cars when they're sick?
A mechanic.
No, we're just gonna do it ourselves,
The graveyard.
right?
That was a trick.
Why
question.
would you do your own cavity?
You tricked me.
You get in there, you get a Milwaukee tool, and you're like, all right, I don't want to pay the extraordinary amount of money to do this. I'm gonna watch a YouTube video, get a nice drill bit, and go, right? Do it yourself.
Oh no.
Hey, you know what? I got chest pains. Man, what does YouTube tell me to do? Well, I take some aspirin, I'll be fine. Okay. Right?
Did you just choke on aspirin?
No, it's a heart attack.
No.
I'm just simply saying, we have all these things in place, right? Why not for this too?
The more I look at that, the worse it got.
Yeah, it's one of those things, right? All right, again, keeping in mind too, along these lines, even the simple things like this, torquing up your lug nuts. How many people who drive their car check their lug nut torque?
0.
Or are they just going to take it in and be like, well, you know, my Uncle Bob, he checked it out and I trust him. I'm not. If I'm the driver of that vehicle, right, I'm not trusting anybody. I'm checking things myself. Because it's so easy to mess up this, and it affects more than what you might even think, right? It affects your braking, your traction with the tire, your wheel bearings, anything, tire wear. But again, I can tell you this as a student, right, in my class, you go, guys, this is one of the most critical things. 99% of my students will go, yeah, it's torquing lug nuts. It's not exciting enough for me, Mr. Getsky. It's boring. It's everyday things. Yeah, but you don't realize how impactful this is on the whole system. Okay, not just the correct twisting force that you're measuring to making sure you have the correct clamping load, but also the correct pattern. There's a technique to using a torque wrench successfully. And again, that's holding your brakes together, folks. After the service, we replaced all the rotors, the pads, we cleaned up the caliper slide pins, we re-greased them, make sure that the caliper is sliding back and forth, we check the brake fluid. We go through with a fine-tuned comb and make sure that everything is done properly and everything is in correct order. Okay? I'm ready now to go break the brake pads in, like I was talking about yesterday. But because we pushed that caliper piston back into the caliper, okay, the first time that I go to use my brakes,
They're not gonna work right away.
they're not going to work right away because I have to build up the hydraulic fluid pressure
And
in the brake system to push that caliper piston back out to make contact with the brake pads to then make contact with that rotor. Okay? Don't be the person that's in a hurry and all of a sudden you're putting the car in reverse to back it out of the driveway and you're going 20 miles an hour and then all of a sudden you push on the brakes expecting brakes and there isn't any because it goes right to the floor. Oh crap, now you're in panic mode, right? Because you're not stopping,
do it again.
okay? Before you even shift that from park to reverse or park to drive, you turn the car on, okay? By doing that, it activates the brake booster and you're going to slowly pump the pedals, okay, to build that brake pressure in the master cylinder to get it out to the lines, to push those pistons out to have feel in the pedal. Okay, again, we're looking for a nice firm pedal feel. Once you have that nice firm pedal, at that point in time, reverse or drive, and then you can slowly start to move the car and then verify that, yep, I have good brake pressure and I am able to stop. Okay, that way you know there's no issues going on and you can safely start to drive the vehicle and break the brake pads in.
Why
Okay?
is that guy hitting the gas?
It's not. This is a clutch, brake pedal, throttle.
Is there a gas pedal?
It's okay. Yeah, there's a gas pedal.
Yeah, you cannot see that from here.
Correct. You can't see through shoes or feet.
Nah, he's hitting the gas.
Okay. Anyways, you're pumping that brake pedal up. You only, by the way, you only get to forget this once. Because as soon as you forget it and you start to back up and you start to hit the brakes, you start panicking, you will never forget that feeling. And you're going to go, I'm never going to do that again because I'm not an idiot. Okay? Just throwing that out there. Just throwing that out there. All right, let's talk about tools. This is probably stuff in your study guide packet that I gave you in terms of different names. Okay? Now, in terms of this particular tool, we need to measure the brake pad lining thickness on my brake pads. Alright? Now, there are several different ways that you could theoretically do this. This is probably the quickest and fastest and easiest ways that most techs are going to use. Okay? And in all honesty, you're probably not going to tell the customer, approximately 8.5 millimeters of pad thickness left, right? Because does the customer realize how much or how little that is?
No.
No,
They don't care.
right? Well, it's not so much they don't care, they don't have anything to reference against. Because they're not educated. They don't know. So as a tech, you have to go in and you have to communicate with them on their level. Guess what you can communicate with them?
Drawings.
What color is the pad?
Green, red, yellow.
Hi, sir, we just want to let you know we did our brake pad inspection on your vehicle as when we were rotating your tires. We found out that your two front tire brake pads are in a yellow, right? We're currently monitoring that. We just want to let you know that you still have plenty of brake pad left, but probably in the next couple months you might want to get that addressed. How simple and clear was that? Oh, I know yellow, right? It's not gray, it's not green, but also at the same point in time, it's not red. right? Stop sign. I can probably keep going, but it's something I'm gonna have to probably start addressing and thinking about the next time I bring my vehicle in, maybe for an oil change.
Did you say the stop sign?
Yeah, red, yellow, green. Go, yield, stop. Right? Hey, sir, we just want to let you know that while we were changing your oil, we did a quick brake pad inspection. We just want to let you know your rear brake pads are at a red. Right? We would highly recommend that you would get those replaced. Would you like to set up an appointment to do that? Right? Oh, you're just trying to rip me off. No, I'm a professional, right?
Hold on, I have a question.
I want to make sure you are safe driving on the road, and you probably were not aware of the condition of your brake pads. Right? I'm just communicating that information to you. You're not going in there going, sir, it's 1 millimeter left, and you have approximately 1.5 days before you die. Like, right? That's, yeah, Simon.
So, one thing, they have full service to just check everything. They like pads.
In most cases, a good place when you take your vehicle there, they're going to do a multi-point inspection, right? Hey, I'm taking it in for an oil change, cool. They're going to make sure that they're checking other things while the oil is draining, because they don't want to just sit around and be like, well, we gotta wait, right? They're getting paid too, so company's going to say, listen, while you're doing this, you're going to earn money. You're going to check the brake pads, you're going to check the tire inflation, check the air filter, right? All these different things. You're going to write it on a report, and then once all the service is done that they come in and want, you're going to hand that to the customer, and you're going to go over it and be like, hey, this is just stuff that we want. We're communicating it to you, so again, you can be educated based off of our professionalism and our knowing of what's good and bad, so that way you can plan to maintain your car. Well, I don't want to pay for all that. That's fine. That's the customer's choice if they don't want to maintain their vehicle. Okay? But then they can't come back to you and say, well, you guys never told us this. No, it's right here in the report. We gave you a copy, we kept a copy. Okay? That way we can't be held liable if you decide not to change your brakes and you get in an accident. Right?
Right.
Anyways, very simple tool to use. These things are pretty cheap. All it is basically saying, hey, we're gonna take this little part here, we're gonna put it up against the brake pad lining material, and we're gonna say, is it that thin? Right? Nope. Okay, is it that thin? Nope. Is it that thin? Which one lines up with how much thickness is left on the pad? It's not an intricate ruler, and you don't have to know 5/8 from 8 millimeters or whatever it is. It's just how thick is it? Super universal, super easy to quickly kind of check things out. You don't even have to remove the caliper in most cases to use this tool to measure the brake pad thickness. Okay, there's a little window typically. Let's see here if I got a picture. Nope, come on. Come on. No, come on, where are you? Right here. Okay, here's the caliper, the blue caliper. More often than not, we're going to have a window to where you can actually go in and actually look at the rotor, right? Here's my piston of my caliper. Okay, here's the backing pad or the backing plate of my brake pad, right? Let me get a different color just to make life a little easier here. And then here's my thickness of my brake pad lining. I literally take that tool, I put it in here. What's the gap between here and here? What's that distance?
Probably like 12.
Right? And again, you're finding one that fits, that doesn't have a lot of wiggle room, and you go, oh, that's yellow. Yellow. Now, the tools do tell you a measurement, right? You can write the measurement down, but you usually just check off red, yellow, green. Now, here's the fun part about this. This particular one is just able to measure the inboard brake pad. We don't have access to be able to measure the outboard brake pad. Okay, so this is not a complete full inspection. It just kind of gives you an idea, right? If this is super thin, I might go in and remove part of the caliper, flip it up so I can have access to the outside pad as well. Okay, that way I can do a complete inspection. But if I'm in a hurry, right, I only got 15 minutes, boom, I can go ahead and do that. Yeah.
Can something happen that the outboard is thinner than the inboard? Or
Sure.
the opposite?
Sure. inboard being thinner than the outboard is probably a little bit more common, just due to the fact that your guide pins can be frozen up. But yeah, you could have the outboard just as thin. It depends on different scenarios, but yeah, that's possible. It's like I said, it's more likely the inboard is thinner, so that's why we typically have access just to the inboard one, because that gives you us a general idea that, okay, we can probably make an educated guess here that the outboard's probably the same or thicker than the interior or the inboard.
Wouldn't technically the pad hit the inboard rotor before the outboard?
Yes,
That would make sense.
but it doesn't start generating friction until the outboard makes contact with the rotor as well. And then it's equal force across the rotor.
But still, like if you just rub your hand against something,
Mhm. Sure, it's going to be dragging, right?
I'm not creating any.
No, there's friction there, yes, but
Any
it's not going to be
amount
any
of-
heat really. That's
Right.
going to be decelerating the vehicle a lot. You'd be surprised. Okay. Now, if I have a frozen caliper piston that doesn't retract, right?
That would be fun.
That's going to be wearing that brake pad lining out much faster because it's constantly rubbing, and your engine has enough horsepower to overcome that, right? But again, you're going to be having a lot of heat into that, which is not ideal. Okay, so that's our brake pad thickness gauge. Again, I'll show you what that looks like when we get out in the shop to actually demo the lab. We have a brake caliper piston compression wrench. Oh my goodness, that's a mouthful. Guess what this does?
Something, I bet it compresses.
It's a wrench that compresses the brake caliper piston.
No way.
You see what I did there?
No.
I mean, again, we're auto techs here. We're going to name it after what it actually does, not because, you know, we want to call it Bob for some random reason. Okay, that's the engineering job. If I'm an engineer, I'm naming it something totally out in left field to confuse everyone. As a tech, I'm going to say, hey, go get me the C clamp. Why is it called a C clamp? Because it's in the shape of a C, right? Simple alphabetic shapes because apparently technicians aren't very smart.
Well,
They don't have a lot of education.
It's true.
That's not true. If I'm a technician, I'm the doctor of the car. Are doctors stupid?
No.
Do they not go to school to learn about anatomy and biology? Oh my goodness. There's so much education to be as an auto tech. Okay? So don't let engineers or anybody think that, oh, you're just someone who changes oil for a living. Oh, it's so much more than that. It's a slap in the face. Anyways, this is a fancy tool that when you put it in the caliper, it's a wrench, so it's like a ratchet. You just kind of move it back and forth, and it eventually expands outwards, and that allows basically to push that caliper piston back in. It retracts it.
The black panels, how big are those?
It depends on the tool.
Like how far apart?
To start with,
Yeah.
they can come in a variety of different shapes and sizes. I mean, enough to be able to where you don't have any problems with the front
Is
calipers.
yours out there?
Yeah, I got them out there.
Alright.
You'll have them.
I just want to look at it.
You wouldn't use these on rear calipers, again, due to the fact that the rear caliper pistons usually have to be retracted by threads, so you have to twist them. Okay, you can't just simply squeeze it in like the fronts. If you don't have fancy tools like this, you don't need this. You could use a C-clamp. Guess what I use at my house?
A C-clamp.
A C-clamp, right? It works. It works well. Works really well.
Simple, but
Okay.
works.
Now, why do I have this tool? Because everyone has a C-clamp. I want you to be using a tool that maybe you might not usually use. Okay, and you can see how that works in
Use the tool
comparison.
that's actually made for that situation.
Right? Uh-oh. Sorry.
No.
Don't look.
Stop scaring me.
I'm gonna give you guys some PTSD. Okay, dial indicator. Now the fun part again is my flexible arms are. You guys destroyed them for the most part.
Me?
So we.
You also never
Is it
really
you?
taught us how to use them.
No, I did.
No, you
You
never.
did for like 30
I did. Just
seconds.
you weren't paying attention. It's okay.
I
So I got these more flexible arms now. I wouldn't say flexi arms. These are a little easier to manipulate. Okay. Okay. Nothing super challenging on this end. They're gonna probably hold their position a lot better or easier as well. Okay.
Oh, this
It's got a magnet. Yep. I can turn the magnet off, so I can just go like this. But then you flip it over here, and then now the magnet's on.
Whoa. So strong, Mr. Gatsby.
Okay?
Strong one.
Don't try to put this on the side and then forget it and then drop this and break it. Okay? I'm gonna tell you right off the bat, I only got 5 of these. These are brand new. I talked to you guys about this yesterday.
Who's snoring?
I even cried a little bit.
Who's snoring?
Oh no, it's Jonathan. Oh. I can't do this. Oh, we don't have much time left. If anyone's watching on YouTube later, we're gonna do a little ASMR. Oh, never mind.